Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well and staying safe. So, I decided that today, instead of doing a movie review like I usually do, I'd do my first documentary review. And I've decided that that documentary will be Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. I just finished watching it, and I gotta say, it was great. It really does a great job at not only discussing Mark Patton's involvement with A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy's Revenge, but also how he first came to Hollywood and the big dreams he had, how he got his start, the impact that A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 had on him, the rampant homophobia at the time, why he decided to leave Hollywood, and his eventual acceptance of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part Two's legacy and his status as an icon among the fans. This is a very heartfelt look at all these things, and it doesn't sugarcoat anything or pull any punches when it goes into detail about the ugliness of homophobia and the effect it had on not only Mark, but a whole generation of gay men who had to live in fear. There are times during the documentary where you see newspaper headlines and news clips from back in the 80s that say all kinds of horrible things about gay men and the AIDS crisis, and seeing all that, just made me absolutely sick to my stomach. And, like I said before, this documentary doesn't pull any punches. When it shows you how bad homophobia was in the 80s, it shows you at full force, and it's horrifying to see. It also shows the media's exploitation of the AIDS tragedy. There's one part involving a reporter from the gossip rag known as the National Enquirer that really shows how low the media would stoop in order to exploit the terrible tragedy of the AIDS epidemic. The documentary also goes into great detail about how the gay subtext of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 had an effect on Mark and led to his decision to quit acting and move to Mexico. He really had a lot to put up with after that movie came out because he was in the closet at the time, and because of that movie's heavy gay subtext, he felt that he had been outed, and even his agent started saying, "You can only be a character actor because you can't play straight." I can definitely understand why Mark left Hollywood because the fallout from everything that was going on was absolutely devastating. It wasn't until the making of the documentary Never Sleep Again, The Elm Street Legacy, that Mark finally came back into the spotlight. I remember reading an interview with one of the makers of that documentary, and I specifically remember him saying that they could make a whole documentary on finding Mark, which really shows just how off the grid he was. When he first started doing conventions, a lot of people would come up to him just to tell him how much they hated the movie, which is a real shitty thing to do. Still, the documentary isn't all gloom and doom. In fact, my favorite part about it is when it shows you all the positive interactions that Mark has had with his fans and how much they love him. To a lot of people in the horror community, especially ones who are LGBT, he's an icon. I recently had the great pleasure of meeting Mark at Schiller Theater back in April of 2019, and he was absolutely wonderful to meet. I remember I was wearing a Married with Children t-shirt at the time, and he told me all about how he knew Katie Sagal before she hit it big with that show. And he also told me about working with Robert Englund, and also how they filmed the scene in Freddy's Revenge where, Freddy rips and just tears himself out of Jesse. So that was really cool. He told me all about how that was filmed, and it was just great to listen to his stories. He's got a lot of interesting stuff to tell. And, I could tell that he really does appreciate his fans and cherishes meeting them. And that's something that I wish all celebrities would do. I got him to sign my Nightmare on Elm Street 2 poster, and I'm very grateful to have his autograph in my collection. If any of you ever get the chance to meet Mark Patton, I highly recommend doing it because he is just a wonderful guy to meet. Well, that just about wraps up my review of Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. I strongly recommend checking this documentary out. It's currently streaming on Shudder, so if you have a subscription, I say give this documentary a watch ASAP. I hope you all continue to do well and stay safe. Bye.